Hi, everybody. Hello. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Okay, we're going to jump right in since we're starting late, and I know you're all anxious to get out of here. So, first what we're going to do is a round of introductions, and then I have some questions, and I know there were some audience questions that were sent to us on Huba, so we're going to cover those as well. So I would like to start with George Stanchev. Would you introduce yourself, please?
My name is George Stanchev. I'm the CEO of Comerc. Comerc's been in the botanical space for 25 years, building systems and facilities for various botanical extractions in the flavor and fragrance market. The last 7 years, we created the Brown Pure 5, and we built machines for the cannabis space. We've been mainly in US. We have offices in Europe and a number of offices in US, and been mainly in the US market in the last 7 years.
One of the things I guess I should have started with is saying our whole panel is going to talk about business development and expanding your business in a multinational framework, from either the US into Europe, or if you're coming from Colombia into Europe. And the panelists that we have here are all coming out of a different, unique perspective on an international expansion. One of the things I'd like to mention about George here that just introduced himself, he's been extracting flavor and fragrance for 25 years out of Bulgaria, which is like one of the leaders in the lavender world. So this is a man that has extraction experience that far exceeds cannabis experience. So he's coming in and has also gone from Europe to America. So he's got a very unique perspective on that. The next person I want to introduce to you is George Terry. George, tell them about your expertise.
So I'm the Executive Vice President of RadSource Industries Technologies. We're actually the #1 X-ray blood irradiator in the world. So I've got 300 plus irradiators in the field, including the Australian Red Cross, the American Red Cross, most of the countries across the globe. And we expanded the same technology into cannabis about going on 4 years ago. So I've been in multiple sites throughout the US and Canada, everywhere from the smallest grow, startup, all the way up to the big operators. And I've seen a lot of good things and a lot of bad things. And I'm here to share some of the experience.
Thank you. And Darren?
Darren MacDonald, I'm the CEO of Cookie Jar. Cookie Jar is based out of Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. We specialize in premium glass aftermarket storage solutions as well as packaging. Aside from our storage, we do have a digital play, or a data play with our digital app at the consumer level that tracks usage, reviews of different brands and strains, and that can be shared on the B2B side.
And Jessica?
Hi, I'm CEO, founder, and chair of Akerna, the first cannabis technology company to list on NASDAQ. We invented seed-to-sale tracking 12.5 years ago, and today we provide a global technology ecosystem for cannabis, the backbone upon which the industry is built, enabling regulation, compliance, taxation, and to date we've tracked more than $30 billion of legal cannabis.
Okay, we're going to dive right in. And while we're doing this, I would like you guys to start thinking about questions. If there's time at the end, we're going to take some audience questions. You've got a wealth of information up here. We're all looking to jump into this European market and excited about it. And you've got experts up here who've done this work. So, George, how do you see the European market evolving over the next 5 years?
That's a very interesting question. European market is very dynamic. There are so many countries involved into it. And this topic over here is about strategies, global strategies, and competitive environment, which is very, very interesting overview on what really going to happen in 5 years. So diversity in Europe, we first need to know our client. So knowing what people want, we can put together every product they need. But how I see that market, I see big pharma getting into it. There is no limitation for big pharma in Europe. Like United States, we have some restrictions, but in Europe, big pharma is going to come big way as well. How big pharma thinks about this industry is pure ingredients, isolated ingredients that they could put drugs around it and provide that to the medical market. Very straightforward. And how everybody else can survive around that. So there is going to be another market which people are going to be after. That's pretty much the boutique market. What we're doing right now, growing nice strains, getting pure extracts, and the word pure is going to be very important here in the next market development. We really going to be focused on real ecologically grown ingredients and extracted in the least hazardous way with least harmful solvents and delivered in the most natural important form to the customer. And there's going to be a boutique, real boutique market that's going to overcome everything that the big pharma is going to be pushing also to the market. And keeping the, also we have to know very well the laws in each country and be able to make it real global. To make it real global, now example with German market. So we're hoping extraction is going to be legal next year. Unfortunately, it's going to be pushed back. So we have to decide where to do the extraction. When we know that our market is in Germany, we have to do the extraction somewhere that that's possible. Example, Czech Republic or somewhere else. Then where we grow, of course, we should grow good strains that are not cost prohibitive, so we can pick up pretty much a global, international, European business that by knowing our customer deliver the best products. And we have to have this customer returning back. So in 5 years, we really have to be able to deliver the best organic, natural products for the customer in a most natural way.
I think you're right about that. The sort of prevailing opinion that I've heard since coming here for the last couple of days has been that Europeans are already connoisseurs of cannabis, and so that, I mean, think about the wine connoisseur. They want the Pinot or they want the Sauvignon Blanc or whatever it is. Everyone has their different flavor that they like, and so then your boutique market comment is that people are going to want what they want, and the market needs to provide it for them in a quality way with flavor and the effects that they want. So it isn't just a medical experience. It's going to become, this tastemaker thing. But the European market's different than America in the sense that, I heard everyone talking today about the love of hash in this market, right? And so you're talking about concentrates and the fact that you got to go where you can operate.
Actually, I'm looking at the boutique cannabis market as gourmet market. You can, like, your extraction vessel is like a pressure cooker. You can cook your own recipes. You can take over, you can offer people flavors, experience, and that's how you get that market followed.
Right. Like Ali, I don't know if any of you guys know, were here when Ali was on the moderating the panel, and he said, grapes are a commodity, but wine is a product. But cannabis is unique because it's both. It's a commodity and a CPG product. So it's an interesting concept. George Terry, talk to us about what some of the lessons are that you've learned. You've said you've been in hundreds of facilities, big ones, small ones, across the globe. What are some of the lessons that you've learned about startup strategies? And if you can, dovetail on what George here said, in terms of knowing that in 5 years we expect the cannabis market to be one of sort of gourmet connoisseur. So what are some of the things that you could give people that are wanting to start up here?
Well, I agree about the regulations. You got to know your regulations, and not just what you guess or what you think, but have them run. If you need to get a consultant, regulations change at the whim of the local regulators. Sometimes they'll go in one direction and then they'll switch to another direction, even testing regulations as far as the product goes, and the mandates that might be local, federal, or even countrywide. So that is something that's big. Also, too, what I find is, I told the guys prior to this, there's two types of people I find in the cannabis industry: those that have been fooled and those that are about to be fooled. Okay, and the reason I say that is because when people come into the cannabis industry, they automatically assume that it's not as a professional as an industry as it is. and they think that they can sell snake oil. Hey, I'm going to try to bring this product in. It might work in another area like food, or it might work in the medical world, but it's not really working in the cannabis world. So even in my experience of my product, we do a radiator that's on site. It's a direct replacement for gamma. There's other technologies that are out there, and 50% of my customer base is people that have tried other failed technologies. And we give them a card and we say, we'll hear from you in a couple months. And, we always hear back from them. So check out your vendors, check out your technologies, talk to people, get references. Because once you go in and you invest in the technology, and whether that's a technology that's going to get you through cultivation or grow or veg or anything like that, you got to make sure that, or lighting solution, talk to people that are in your same boat. That you're either in a startup or when they started, what lessons did they find out? Did they learn early on about that product? What did it impact on their crop? I've had customers that they've gone out with other technologies on the cultivation side on decontamination. It's turned all their product yellow, or it dried it up, or it turned it all soft and smushy. It ruined their whole crop. $500,000 worth of product gone. Or they have to turn it to extract and they get 20 cents on the dollar. Had they talked to other people, other people, or did a little bit of research, they could have saved themselves a lot of time and money. So, that's my big thing, is just know your competitors, be friendly with your competitors. Friendly competition is fine, but be careful with your tool and check it out.
Ourselves competitors, we consider ourselves colleagues, and we help each other, we call each other, and I think developing a network where you can be friendly with the people who are doing exactly what you're doing, I think that's really smart. In a perfect world, I hate to hear that people have to irradiate their flower. Like, in a perfect world, they should be able to grow clean cannabis and not need to irradiate it. But the regulations are so stringent that sometimes I guess that's required, huh?
Yeah, it's required because people die. So, there's the market that says, oh, it should be organic, but you know what, guys? I've got people, and I can name multiple people, where they come in and we go in, we talk to them, and they say, I don't need your machine. I don't have any problem with mold or mildew. I don't have any aspergillus. And we say, here's a card. And 6 months later, they call us and say, I need it now. I've got stuff I don't know where it came. Because what happens is the season changes. Moisture comes in, and it's everywhere. So, people, I'm dealing with a situation now in one of the states. They say, everything should be clean. It should be organic. It's not the real world. Even stuff that you buy that's food-based, people get sick from organic food too. There's pathogens that might be there or whatever. No matter what, in this world, we're full of germs. And it's at the end, do you want to be able to address those germs? And it's nice when you don't have to, but you always need a backup plan that's going to be able to address that, because some people cannot accept those type of pathogens in their bodies. It will kill them.
Yeah, I always say bad news does not get better with time. And some people don't want to hear the bad news that their weed isn't great.
Right.
So just assume that maybe you'll have one bad crop and be prepared. We're going to switch to Darren, and we're going to switch gears a little bit here. Because one of the things that we're talking about is an emerging market. So George talked about the fact that, what's going to happen in the next 5 years is it's going to evolve into this boutique market, right? But where we're at right now, everybody's chomping at the bit to get started because with medical in Europe, we're all patiently waiting for Germany to go rec. I want to know, Darren, do you think what are your thoughts on having a first mover advantage? Is it an advantage getting to market first?
That's a great question, Jamie. And I think on paper, being early to market shows a lot of advantages to any business. It's immediate market share, it's quick brand recognition. But as we've seen in the Canadian market over the last 4+ years, a lot of the first to market actually faltered in many ways, and it proved to be very costly. both from brand recognition. If they didn't have deep pockets or other capital, they went out of business. So quite frankly, I think the best approach is become an expert in your backyard first before you start exploring playing with your neighbors. Okay, do a lot of research. If you're ready to go to the next market on the international level, I think it's extremely important to do your research, whether that's through focus groups, consultants, utilizing your network to learn. I know what George said with learn the policies, learn the regulations before you jump into that market. Because as we've seen just this week, every country is very, very different on their expectation and what the rules and regulations are. So I think to answer your question, Jamie, as long as you're using your brains and your experience before speed, and you're ready to, you have the proper game plan before you actually go to that next market, I don't see it being advantageous unless you're truly prepared to tackle that market.
Well, let's piggyback on that a little bit. Let's say that you've got, like, as an example, with George here having 25 years of extraction experience, not necessarily cannabis, but now he has cannabis experience. You're saying rely on your business expertise, because I think there's people in this room, and I've met people at this conference that are intrigued about the industry. They have no experience in their backyard because this is their backyard and it doesn't exist yet. So how do they go use their brains and go get themselves prepared? So are you suggesting perhaps that they wait to enter, or are you suggesting that there's a way for them to do that due diligence to get prepared?
I think going back to the comment on utilizing, whether it's a consulting firm or focus groups, as I mentioned, educate yourself and get yourself ready. I'm not saying don't necessarily enter that market, just be prepared to become an expert in that market as you dive into it. From experience with Cookie Jar, we actually utilized consultants before we even entered our own backyard to understand the market. And if we entered the market in 2018 when it became federally legal, I think we would have fallen flat on our face, to be quite honest, because the timing wasn't right for us. As we expanded in the Canadian market, became an expert, then we focused on the US market. And where we are today is now we're trying to explore the European market. So just doing your due diligence, learning, educating yourself, educating your team, and then educating the market as you're ready to enter that space.
And well, it's like what George Terry said, know your regs, be prepared, be careful. Jessica, you have, I think, 12 years of experience in the cannabis industry, pioneer, one of the, if not the first company to go public on the NASDAQ. Like, we're all sitting with greatness here. You should all be really proud of ICBC for getting her to get on an airplane. I'm excited to be on this panel with you. What are some of the foundational strategies with all of that experience, talking to this room, what are some of the foundational strategies that you could give us, little nuggets of information to help people be prepared as they decide if they do want to jump into this emerging market?
Thank you for that, and I do have to say, ICBC, whoever's listening, having Jamie as the moderator was a nice big draw. So with that, let's say you are going to jump into a new emerging market. So back to the basics, right? Focus on foundational items. I like to think of them as the 3 Ps: people, products, process. Hire the right people, put them in the right seats on the bus. Products, this is an interesting one and maybe a little bit of a tip from the future for all of us who come from the future, who've been in this for over a decade. One of the biggest mistakes that we see early businesses do is they try to either grow too many strains or carry too many products in their retail location. And so when you're starting out in business, really focusing on which products am I going to carry and or produce, and which ones can I do well and at a price point that makes sense. And then third, and I would say arguably the most important, is process. Setting up your processes ahead of time. Focusing on compliance and selecting software, technology that's going to support that compliance, because compliance is table stakes. you can't, literally, you cannot remain in business without it because you won't keep your license. And selecting a vendor software technology that can scale with you and grow as you grow so that you're not taking on something that's too big when you start, but that you're also not starting with something that's so lightweight that you have to abandon it and pay to reinstall over and over through the years. So those are my tips.
That's good advice. I think, I came out of real estate and I experienced that. We bought a cheap property management software and thought, oh, this will get us through. And then we grew, and then we had to actually integrate all that data into a new software, and it was way more expensive had we just bought the expensive one the first time. Like, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, you're gonna find time to do it again and clean it up. So I think that was really good advice. And then I have a girlfriend who's a CEO coach, and she always says, right butts in the right seats. You gotta hire the right people. So we had a couple of questions from the audience prior on the Whova app, and we're gonna jump into those. And then we're gonna open the panel up for questions from the audience. So the first question we got was somebody who said that they're curious about the multi-state operators that are operating, the big companies that are in the US right now. What was our opinion about them trying to come into the European market? And so George, will you take that first?
Well, that's real danger to the small companies. Of course, I can give an example with Arizona marijuana market. So Arizona is a very unique marijuana market. It has licenses which are drawn by lottery. So you have like 160 licenses and no more than that, at least in the next couple of years. And you have, let's say, 35 vape companies in there, 35 brands which are local. But there are about 1,000 California vape brands, and at least 10 of them are huge. So them getting into the Arizona space, that's going to wipe out everybody else. And that's the situation here too. We have to be conscious about what exactly comes to this market and be prepared to it. So there are really two ways to do successful strategy in this way. Like one way is like the books, business book says, first learn who's doing it and copy him, but doing it better. Or the second is see what your customer wants and evaluate your market, make your metrics, but not how much you want to spend, how much your market is, and then build your strategy from the back up. And then divide the numbers by 2 for sales and multiply your numbers that you're going to spend. Then you're going to get probably the right numbers, and that's how you prepare yourself for a fight. And the most successful fight is how many customers are going to buy from you every day.
Yeah, I always say the commodity in cannabis is the shelf. That's what we're fighting for, is shelf space. Ultimately, that end product ends up on a shelf in a store somewhere. And what I always tell people that ask me to consult with them is, you have to start with the shelf. Because lots of people are like, oh, I'm gonna go grow weed, it's gonna be so much fun, or I'm gonna make a product, it's gonna be so great. And then they have a great weed or they have a great product, and then they're like, now what? They gotta go sell it. You really wanna have those orders. That goes to Jessica's point. You don't wanna grow 15 strains. What's the strains that people want, or what's the niche that's missing in the market? And so you've gotta go fill that niche. You gotta start with your shelf in mind, exactly. But Jessica, can you elaborate on George's point? Because you've got the 12 years of experience in the United States market. So if people like George believe that it's a danger to the small operator, and there's probably truth to that, we're watching it in different states or managing it differently. What are some of the things that we could do in Europe here to protect that small operator?
I think the only long-term viable answer to that is really regulatory or legislative in some way. And we certainly see this in some US states, where the states have looked at other states and they've said, you know, we're going to make sure that our licenses are awarded to residents of the state. And so there's a residency requirement to gain the license. Often, those residents and resident businesses will still partner with a multi-state operator, larger entity from another state, but you're still ensuring some local business and some local ownership. And certainly for our multi-country clients, of course, Canada having quite a nice advantage, being the first G7 country to fully federally legalize. We do see a lot of multi-country operators operating out of Canada that are beginning to get these toehold licenses in different markets, and in Colombia, Latin America, with the intention to hopefully export to Europe, and then European licenses to anchor that. I do think, in addition to the countries wanting to enable the economic benefits of putting those licenses, requiring them to be held by local residents, I also think there's a benefit that's not talked about for the multi-country operators. So even when it's not required, there is a benefit to partner with local businesses, local residents who know the market, who know the end consumer, and who know the nuances there.
Yeah, for sure, you need boots on the ground, that intimate knowledge of the market, which actually ties really nicely into the second question that came from the audience on Whova. It was a person that said they provide climatization materials to both indoor and outdoor growers, and they wanted to know, well, I'm just gonna summarize the question by saying they're feeling very impatient because they have to wait, because we're not ready yet. So what can people who are anxious to get here, what can they do while they're waiting? Some of the estimates have been, most of them, and let me take a poll here. How many of you think that it's gonna be mid-2024 before we're gonna see actual adult use sales in Germany? Okay, quite a number of you. How many of you think it'll be sooner? A few people. How many of you think it'll be 2025 because they're just gonna mess it all up? And okay, so a few of you. Well, there's a great example of we don't know. It could be next year, it could be the year after, it could be the year after that. And in the meantime, we've got all these people excited to get in the market. What can people do in the meantime? They're waiting. Go for it, Darren.
Yeah, I think, I don't know too many governments that make decisions very quickly, and if they do, it's not always the right decision to go down the right path. I think it's extremely important to make sure you stay as close as you can with the government, to understand what those rules and regulations are, to make sure that you're set up for success when they do make that decision. I think a lot of people talk about educating the industry in a lot of different facets. I think it's just as important to educate the government on what we feel is the proper way of doing things. I think it's extremely important to look at some of the countries that have legalized federally, on what's gone well, what hasn't gone well, how can we learn from this, and when that particular market's ready to go, they won't make the same mistakes. I think the first key step is on actually legalizing it, but if we can educate our governments on the best way to do it, I think that'll help expedite the process.
Yeah, and just piggybacking on what Darren said, regulators are there for public safety, and if they're there to make sure the public is protected, whether it's for a safety reason or just so that they don't get scammed or they're not poisoned, right? So, but regulators are relying on you, like what he was saying, in order to give them the right information. Remember, these are people that come in, they might not necessarily be from the industry themselves, and they are looking for hard facts. They're not looking for conjecture, or they're not looking for what your opinion is. But if you're able to provide these regulators with hard facts, you're able to help shape the regulations in your area, and I've seen that a lot, where people go into these regulators. I sit with a lot of state regulators, a lot, and the information that they gather from different sources helps them shape the regulations for either that state, whether it's a federal thing or a country or whatever. So, be as open and honest with your regulators. Don't try to snow them. Give them the hard facts. And don't give them your opinion. Give them facts so that they can draw their own opinions on what they think will help them with public safety.
I agree. Raise your hand if you are in contact with a local, state, federal, or land regulator. I just want to say thank you, because George is right. It is going to require us educating the lawmakers because they don't know. Again, another real estate example is, you buy a house, You get an inspector. Well, if the inspector was a former electrician, they're gonna come in and find all the electrical problems, and they don't know shit about plumbing, right? Well, all these legislators came out of somewhere, and they know, they're one-trick ponies. Well, none of them have come out of cannabis because it's brand new. So it's on us to go to them and help them understand what needs to happen. One of the things I can tell you is, from the standpoint of international cannabis business development strategies, education of regulators is a huge component of a strategy, because you can take their order. What do they want? They want to keep the consumer safe. They want to keep the constituents happy with them. They want to raise tax revenue. They have all of these different competing agendas. What we need to help them understand is, how can they craft a win-win? So one of the examples is, earlier we talked about how there's this big appetite for hash in Europe. Well, is hash even in the agenda right now? Legislators always approach things with fear as their motivator. Oh, we gotta keep people safe, we have to make sure, we're gonna limit this, we're gonna limit that, we're gonna tax it, we're gonna make sure there's not enough licenses. Bo Whitney just gave a presentation and talked about what the demand is gonna be in Germany when it goes rec. And I'm gonna tell you right now, they're not gonna meet it. They're gonna sell out immediately. How do we teach our legislators to learn from what's happened in the last, 22 years of cannabis in America? Anyone want to take that?
First, it starts by organizing. So I'm going to put on my chair of USCC hat right now, the US Cannabis Council, and really forming a trade association, the folks just before us, speaking on behalf of a European-based trade organization, pooling your voice so that your regulators are hearing one voice, really hiring some folks who are really great at policy, helping to write that policy. And then at the end of the day, the public regulators care about three things. They care about public safety, product safety, and patient or consumer safety. And ensuring that you're speaking to the things that they care about. How are we going to protect the public? How are we going to protect from illicit sources? How are we going to ensure that the products are safe? How are we going to ensure that the patients and the consumers can purchase safely?
Yeah, from a biz dev standpoint, you're out here trying to develop business strategies to get your products or your grow or raise money or whatever it is you're doing at your corporate level. But none of that happens if your business isn't going to be viable because we don't have the right legislation in place. You guys, this is a very ripe opportunity because they haven't written the regs yet. So what I would also say is, please put in your budgets money for the people that are out there lobbying, because if you can help fund them and start speaking with one voice, as an industry, if we can start speaking with one voice, we will become more powerful. George, I have a question for you. So right now you're based out of where? But I know you're doing business in the US.
Headquarters in Arizona.
In Arizona.
We have also California, Oregon, Colorado, Pennsylvania.
Okay, and so when you see all the different regulations that are at a state level, because we don't have any federal legalization in the US, and we're starting to see the same thing happen here in Europe. There's medical in Germany, there's medical in Italy, there's medical in France, but no EU legislation. What would the advice be if you could rub the genie's bottle and a legislator could pop out? What would the advice be that you would give them?
Well, maybe US is at least 5 years ahead in that legislation, and they are trade associations in the United States. They've been through all of this. They've been talking to senators, they've been talking to mayors, they've been talking to local authorities, to experts, and that system has been already implemented, especially in California. It's a big movement and stuff. So we have to connect those organizations, and European Trade Association needs to learn from all the success that was done and how eventually that was done in the United States.
Thank you. Do we have any questions in the audience?
Let's hear
Let's hear it for the panel. It's so amazing.
I'll turn it on. How about that? Step one, plug it in. Step two, turn it on. Anyone has questions? Oh, so close. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a pretty open-ended question. I'm curious what perspectives you have on the development of an international cannabis market, what benefits it might provide, what risks it might contain, and how it ought to be phased in a way that maximizes the benefits for a diverse and broad cannabis community.
Can you clarify what you mean by an international cannabis market?
Yeah, so one in which countries can trade with one another. We were just talking about the patchwork of regulations in the states and the differences between the countries. So one that resembles trade for other commodities, and when that might take effect.
Well, we talked about cannabis connoisseurs, and I can't wait to go and buy the equivalent of what I'm able to do with coffee.
I say that all the time. I would love to buy some Moroccan hash at my local place, right? Just hop in, get a Spanish haze, get some Moroccan hash.
That's right.
Great, some actual Thai stick. Oh, I hope I'm still alive when that happens.
And then Durban poison for the next week when you want something a little different.
Let's talk about it. Come to my house.
We just
We'll
have
start
to
a small
manifest
importing.
it. We have to manifest it as an organization here. So everyone in this room, just put that picture in your mind and then think about all that power we would have. That's right.
Can I say though, on the pro side, from an environmental perspective, purely environmental perspective, it would be great to grow cannabis where there's a lower cost for production than where much of it is grown today. And also, a lot has been invested in growing it in places that are maybe not the most naturally
Warehouses in
environment.
Canada, for example. Just saying.
I didn't say it.
I'll say it. It's weird.
And that's going to prohibit regulation for a while.
And even from a medicinal side too, I might have somebody who's sitting in Europe that there might be a medicine that's grown in the US or maybe in Colombia or something that might be better for their condition, but they can't get it because of regulations. So I think a bigger global market will eventually help the patient to get the right medicine that they need in order to address whatever condition that they might be using it for.
Yeah, from my perspective, I would love to have one manufacturing facility for Bang Chocolate and then just ship it all over the world and not have to have 50 different ones or one in Canada, one in, you get it. It's inefficient and it makes companies less profitable. Bo, what's up?
In some of my analysis, the biggest markets economically are North America and in EU. But from a consumer perspective, the larger markets are in Asia and Africa. And so what advice do you have, any observations on how to engage the Asian and African markets in addition to the US and North American markets?
You're way out of my expertise. Anyone here want to talk about Asia or Africa?
So it's regulatory, most of these areas, right? I mean, in some of these places, if you even say CBD or you say THC, you're good, they'll lock you up. So those markets, first they have to understand the benefits of the CBD. It took a while in the US, of understanding what the actual benefits are medicinally and for even the recreational market. Once the culture accepts it, and there's enough, so it comes through education legislatures, through things like what Jessica's doing with Chamber of Commerce's, then eventually they're going to go. I mean, in Thailand, they're actually, we're actually talking with some people in Thailand right now, which, 3 years ago would have been unheard of. But some countries, you're just not going to walk in and say, hey, guess what, cannabis is here. You'll be like, yep, right to the clink.
I could just think that for everywhere, it's a good source of new revenue. Normally, which is monopoly money, right? We go, oh, this year it's the Republicans, we're going to give it to the military. Oh, this year it's the Democrats, we're going to give it to education. It's the same dollar, we just move it back and forth on the board. But cannabis is bringing new dollars to the table and into the budget. So I could see these emerging markets being really excited about having new dollars.
But that also leads to, we're up here, over here. Hi, up to your left.
Oh.
It's Ungayo.
Hi, what's
But that
up?
also leads to, I mean, a lot of these cultures and the way capitalism works all the time is people see the opportunity for new dollars and they don't really want to spread it around. They want to see a way to create a monopoly for themselves and to hold on to those new dollars, especially in a lot of countries where there's a culture of, corruption's a strong word, but selfishness, right? So how do you get past that? Because you have to talk to umpteen different legislatures who are their own kings of their own little fiefdoms.
Well, that's part of it. I think Tom Zuber said on a panel yesterday, and I thought he was spot on. One of the things that we didn't get right in the US is we don't talk a lot in the US about the actual medical benefits of cannabis, that it's medicine. It's killing cancer, it's helping people with Parkinson's and epilepsy, and we talk about tax dollars because America only cares about money. But the reality is we can get people off opiates. And I think that is something where when you start talking about medical benefits, you get people really excited and it isn't just a dollar conversation. Is there a question up there?
Yes.
Hi, Darren Hickman from Africa News Global. I'd like to springboard off something Bo just mentioned, talking about Africa. And maybe Jessica, this might be for you in your capacity as the head of the U.S. Cannabis Council. One of their primary focuses is kind of social justice, social equity. Do you see international cannabis strategy, business development strategies intermingled with the effort around social justice and social equity? For example, possibly bridging, because there's similar efforts in Europe, and Germany was mentioned earlier, in South America. Do you see possible strategies to bridge these initiatives to leverage the international opportunities?
Well, I certainly hope so. I'm not sure that it's quite as sophisticated as your question, and I really appreciate that push to think about things more globally, more holistically. I'll say one of the big initiatives, as you know, for the U.S. Cannabis Council is social equity. It's something that we have largely not gotten right to date in the US. And so I think it starts with acknowledging, hey, we really haven't gotten this right yet. And what can we do about it now? How can we try to resolve that? And I really appreciate the push to say, hey, is there a bridge to resolve it that's not only domestically within your country, but there's some bridges to resolve it by reaching across the lines. And I had the great pleasure to speak at Parliament in the UK a few weeks ago as chair of USCC, and was able to really highlight this as a major topic that, hey, as you're thinking about your country, your new legislation, learn from the fact that this is something we really didn't get right. And how can we start to think about getting that right moving forward? And I'm just gonna maybe circle back to one point I made earlier too, which is it doesn't have to be wholly owned licenses. There can be really important partnerships that couple people that bring different strengths to the table as well.
Yeah, I think it's good. Nobody should be in prison for this plan.
Ever.
We gotta get these people out.
Yes. Once again, a fantastic panel. Let's hear it.
Thank you for the panel, and thank all of you. And thank all of you for being involved, and we'll see you later.